Shumai, and I'm here to read another piece. It is a short story, well, a poem. I call them poem stories, but it's sort of aimed at children, for a children's story. I mean, during the group, writing group, during book week, we did about children's stories. So I came up with this story, and I went home and I worked on it a bit more. And I have to admit, I've enjoyed it. It's been a fun piece to work on, to be honest with you. Anyway, I'll read it to you. It's entitled Gnome in the Tome and the Crook in the Book. Eric is in Belfast Central Library. Every little corner, every little nook had a book. Eric took a book to have a look. He sat down in the middle of the room and opened the book. Sitting beside Eric was a gnome. They were on the first floor, below the dome. The gnome was wearing black boots, a jacket of brown tweed, and green trousers. He had a brown beard, and his eyes each as if an amber bead. There was a pipe in his mouth that sent up ringlets into the air. As he puffed, he mumbled, "The Central Library is my home, where I live in an old giant tome." He continued, "And in that book that you had a look is a crook, that you have now set free, where he will go around smuggling on a smuggling spree." So the crook that came out of the book ran around and made a nuisance of himself, stealing book after book. Every book contained a wealth, which the crook did not want anybody to have a look. He had a sack where he put each book. To the crook, the gnome would plead, "Get back in your book," and for the books to retrocede. The crook and his head that shook, "No, spare me the screed." But instead, Eric quickly shook the crook, and from him felled every book. From his black striped jumper, trousers and under his hat, tucked in his belt and from his sack. The books knocked and thudded on the floor as Eric shook, which heaped in a pile. Every book that he took that fell from him, his every nook. The gnome, wide-eyed, said, "You must get the crook back in the book." Eric stands up and replied, "How do I get the crook back in the book?" The gnome puffed on his pipe. "I will go into his book, and he will follow me back through to his world, because the crook does not like anybody to look upon his world so full of sneaky nooks." The gnome rubs his nose and continued, "As soon as he enters, you close the book." So the gnome went into the crook's book, and true to his word, followed the crook back into his book, and they both vanished. The cover of the book was quickly closed by Eric in a small puff of dust. Snap. All was quiet. Just the rustle of the newspaper, the tapping keys on the computer's keyboard, and the slur of turning pages. Then, like a mini trapdoor on the floor, the cover opened to ajar. The gnome at first had a peek. Then he pushed the cover fully opened and climbed out from the book. The gnome jerking his head around. Did the crook stay in or come out of his book? Eric breathed out and said, "The crook stayed in his book." The The gnome quickly closed the book and tied string around it, the book that Eric had a look. The gnome walked over to his tome and opened the cover and walked into his home. He said, "Bye. I will see you next time when you fancy a look in a book. But just don't let it be that book where a crook came out of the book." And that's the end. I'll probably tweak it a little as time goes on, but I think I'm pleased with it, and I hope you have enjoyed it all. So, hwyl.